Hello, it's Kim Malinowski. Um, I'm a little disheveled. I don't have hot water at my new house. It's been out the entire time I've been here, and it's been like a week. So like my hair is just like not happy, shall we say. And I'm living with it. So apologies if you needed the diva. It may not be happening today, except for an attitude. It's been good though. I mean, I can't completely complain, you know, it would be awful. Um, okay, this is the Rooted Woman Oracle. All right, and it's by Shannon Blackie, and the artwork is by Hannah Willow. I'll put it up there again. It is a beautiful deck, and like we're getting closer to Samhain, so I feel like Samhain is both earthy and has this like mystical sort of sense to it. I know people will be like, "That's witchy," but it goes beyond, just your traditional witch sort of like energy. There's a lot of I believe in the veil between, the living and the dead, and that it thins, and I see shades, and like I'm always like, was that like real? And does other people see it as the real question? And the answer is it's real, but other people don't necessarily see it or believe it. So that's always a trouble for me in these liminal times. Now, I am a super fan of Maven, and all the other Beltane is my one of my favorites. Like Beltane and Samhain are probably my two biggest. Fall. Yule is sort of like it's Christmas for Kim. So this is W.I.T.C.H, woman in total control of herself, which is interesting. And I've already looked at the cards and also what their personal decks say, because like this isn't really like a it's not really tarot, right? So it's not like, oh, the fool, we're going off on this journey. And it's really interesting what we're being called to do. And it's perfectly like it's perfect timing, like in terms of if you're in the US politics, if you are around the world politics, and that sort of thing. Um, I'm gonna start with the Rooted Woman. Okay. So there's two that came out that are in a row, but we got them 31 and then 30. I'm not in the right. Okay. Switching it up, but I'm not fixing this. Got 30 and 31. I was like, I know we did. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right, you can see the back of the cards are beautiful. And this is 31, the Hive Queen. And I'm not going to read everything that's in the book. There's a lot, okay? But it's the idea of, sort of like forgiveness and, you know, being sort of like creating the sweet. You don't have to be the sweet. You don't have to believe in the sweet, but like you do forgive. And it made it very, very clear that you forgive yourself first, which is interesting to me because like I'm always blaming myself for everything. The war in Gaza is Kim's fault, all these things. And I'm like, I should be doing more. Well, forgive yourself first. We can't be everywhere. We have to pick our battles. Sometimes we just have to figure out how to get the water to be hot. Sometimes that's all we can do. Sort of just forgive ourselves for our little transgressions or idiosyncrasies that I can't even say today. Okay. And then after you forgive yourself, then if others ask for forgiveness, the idea is that, at least in the book, is that you then forgive them. You offer this like peace. And I want to caveat that. Okay. There's certain things that you can't forgive, or if you forgive it, you have to protect yourself still. You still have to keep your boundaries. So you can forgive the person that hurts you, but keep your boundaries and don't fall into the trap of letting it happen again because you want to be, you know, helpful, or you think that you need to love them more, or whatever it might be, okay? Whatever situation. So that is my caveat, is like, keep your boundaries. Know your self-worth enough that if it is not healthy for you, you don't have to do it. Do another forgiveness of yourself. Call it a day. Okay? And so with this a hive queen, it just says the bees are nature's alchemists, making honey from pollen, turning base flower material into liquid gold. And it's long associated with the goddess. Um, yeah. So it talks about these are her boundaries, both tender and fierce, engaged to keep the hive of her heart whole, a welcoming place for the bees to sing their songs, make melody and honey once there was only sorrow. So alchemy of taking the pain into joy, or insert words here. So it's alchemy is probably a big word. Asking yourself to transform yourself a bit, small steps, like just forgiving yourself kind of like relieves some of this tension, and it allows you to like keep going and actually get your list done instead of beating yourself up that you have the list and you haven't done it. And yeah. Fine. All right. And then the next one that we got was 30, Goddess of Grace. Now, this is a beautiful card, I know. Now I'm gonna just like read just the first sentence or so. The goddess of grace is a benign ruler whose principal gift is kindness. Rather than doling out judgment or punishment whenever her people commits a crime or tra- transgresses against another, she encourages her people to gather around the lotus fire. The offender is brought to the fire there. All members of the community name every good deed and kindness the offender has ever performed since childhood. In this way, the wayward soul is brought home to herself and her community rather than ostracized through retribution and shame. And that is like an amazing, amazing idea. Goes with that alchemy of forgiveness, completely changing. So, again, caveat, if someone has abused you or whatever it is, you have cut off your parents. I'm not saying not to, or to like reconnect. I'm saying you can offer forgiveness to yourself. You can forgive people without, you know, you can forgive people without actually like telling them and everything else and like interacting. You just move on with your life. And then Goddess of Grace is sort of asking us to turn that pain, see all the positive stuff. And if you can't see the positive in that other person, like I said, if they hurt you, don't hurt yourself more. If you feel like you can't do something, just don't do it. Don't worry about it. So then what you do, take a deep breath and list everything that you have done since childhood of everything good. Everything good. Stop. Don't look at the negative. I'm goth enough for us all. I'm emo enough for us all. That's why I'm a poet. It's true. Poets are pretty emo. Just saying. I'm sure there's posts that are like, I'm not emo. And then I'm like calling into question, hmm, I'll just leave it there. I think after that, I have to beg for forgiveness. It's interesting. It's our third card, the story keeper. Now, in my family, the oldest child, and in this case, the oldest woman in my Polish side, was given all the stories of the family. These are secret stories of abuse, molestation, concentration camps. I mean, these are not not pretty stories. Okay. So that is why it is relied on one to keep them, to hold them. And I was the oldest and I listened. Okay. So we all have stories. They don't have to be like dark and crazy, but we have stories that we need to keep and sort of hold to ourselves. And this is true of ourselves. We have stories that we forget about ourselves. Oh, I was courageous this day. And then on another day when we are feeling so low, we don't remember that we are courageous. We just tell ourselves how awful we are. At least I do. And when every day is, oh, I'm awful, I'm awful, I'm awful, I'm awful, it builds up and you feel it and you just sort of collapse. But then you have to remember those stories of conquest and domination and going after the world and the dreams and everything. I've been listening to Hamilton, so I was like, politics, make the revolution. Um, I was blacklisted once. I'm trying to get blacklisted a second time. And those are the story keepers. Okay, you are made of moonlight and stories. The night and the trees know this, which is why when you need to change in your narrative, you would do well to seek their counsel. That's why we say go ground yourself, go, forest bathe. Some stories lift us up and encourage our potential, our inherent magic. Other stories limit, diminish, or destroy our worth. You are being asked right now to consider which stories you are listening to and which you are telling. And I got a very strong thing for the United States that we tell different stories, don't we? And stories are power. The only difference between a poet and a politician is money. I'll say that again. The only difference between a poet and a politician is money. Politicians use their words and their stories, and they go out there and they win hearts, even if they don't deserve it. It's up to us all around the world, not just the United States, but all around the world to know what stories we are telling. When we tell the stories of Gaza, do we tell it all? Tell everyone's stories. Don't have to have sides. I don't have sides. I just know I want it to stop. I can lose friends over that, but it's true. I believe that our stories create peace just as much as it creates war. My poetry helps pay for Ukraine, the fight, and several anthologies used to pay and fundraise. When I was blacklisted, I'm pretty sure it was because my poem was read at a Doctors Without Borders, you know, um, fundraiser. I would have already been on the list, but I think that was the final nail in the Facebook page that I can no longer access. I have a new Facebook page for those of you who want to friend me. It's real, and I am trying to get blacklisted a second time because I tell those stories. Sometimes we need the stories of the past, and sometimes we need stories of what could come, good or bad. What we need to know is our audience. If our audience is us, we need to know what will help us the most. I'm not telling you any side that you should vote for, you should do, or whatever, but you have to make decisions for yourself. No one can tell you how to do any of this. It would be so easy if we could, right? But it'd probably turn into, Hitler. Okay. So we have to make sure that we tell our stories, know our stories, be keepers of our stories, record them for generations, especially if they're like family lore, and just Use them when you need to. They come. Sometimes sometimes like you learn from the past and like you know certain things are cyclical. Um wow, I was gonna cry, but like I mean like I was assaulted, I would say 2.5 months ago. You could call it sexual assault if you really want. Um it's debatable. It was in front of a lot of people. It was not being able to prove it. Um I don't want to say exactly where it was because it would harm the good people, but it was a power struggle. And I basically told him he wasn't doing it good enough. And once you emasculated him, he left me alone. I don't know where it came from, that those words, right? But my grandmother telling me all those stories, one of them was about, this sort of thing. And I think it came into play. I think I was like, well, I know how, we women get through this. So, I mean, it's there. Our stories, even in collective families and everything, really do matter, and it affects how we deal with situations. I mean, that is just the case. I'm gonna have to now put like all these warnings on this poor little thing, but I'm sorry. All right, this is the word. I can't say it. The rooted woman oracle. I'm just going to it now because I already like messed up that one. Let me get this. All right, stone circle was the first one. It's up there. It's 14. Now it says the sacred landscape, and it talks about how in early Europe there was lots and lots of circles. And it seems to be a call to like ritual and to space. It doesn't have to be to a stone circle, of course, but it did make it sound like it was to a landscape that would be spiritual to us. So if that would be a church or if there's a sacred spot, like you call it sacred, um, you know, this card emphasizes the need to recognize and honor the cycles and seasons of our own bodies and our own lives. Body is also a sacred site in ways you might bring yourself into greater attunement with yours. How might you recognize its need for rest at certain times and delight in its strength and energy at others? The body, in very real sense, is our soulmate. Our journey through life depends on it. Body literally is the ground of our being. This card invites us to consider that ground as sacred. So, like, our body as sacred. Now, I understand what they're going at, okay? But a lot of our rhetoric right now is about sanctity of life. And that sounds a little too close, even though I don't think that's what they meant. So if you want to think about stone circle and sacred landscape, I think it does. You can like say it's us or whatever, but I think more than that, we just have to get out of our zone and go into somewhere else. So get out of McDonald's, that's my place usually. And then, go into, a thicket or something. My last thicket was it was an archaeology dig and I had briars, lots of briars, so I'm bleeding. And it took a week to have all of the I don't even know what they are, like things that come out of it, come out of my skin. They're sort of like what's in there like splinters, but there's too many of them to get them out all over my body. So lots of Epsom salts. But like even going there, it was it was painful but sacred. Where you just change and you do something different. All right. 7, Ellen, the pathmaker or pathmaker and guide. I want to call her an oracle, but pathmaker and guide. So she's very much into showing the way and leading the way. And there's so many paths that can be taken. It says in an old Welsh story called The Dream of I don't know. Ellen, an otherworldly princess of Britain, appears to the Roman Emperor Masson in an dazzling a dream vision. She acts as the guide, to captivate him with vision of beautiful land across the waters and a beautiful woman there, which he instantly falls in love. And so Ellen reels Maskin in along the thread of her dream paths, bringing him to her so he can marry her and serve the land alongside as his king. Um, okay. The story tells us that it was Ellen who built the so-called Roman roads, which joined up for the first time the various remote regions of the land. The story firmly states that the men of Britain would have allowed the roads to be built for no one but her, because she was native to the land's representative. So there's something like deeper than I just live here. Um, yes, Ellen, like so many other female characters in Celtic myth and story, is a representative of her sovereignty, the goddess of the land. Okay, and it says the building of these great connecting roads, and there's reason why Ellen has now come to be known as Ellen of the Ways. Ellen then can be seen as an ally on our journey, a native goddess and guide who helps us dream into being our own unique pathway through life. Look for her in your dreams. So there is something about dreams being powerful here, a collective wish, if you would. I think everything is possible. We just have to believe it and make it so. Part of my job as being a poet, I see what can be. And a lot of people get very frustrated and very angry with me because they're like, well, I don't want to see it that way. I don't want to do it. That means work. And usually I make it happen by myself. Sometimes we just know you have to do the work. If somebody else isn't going to do it, it's up to us. And they might get some credit, but everyone's going to know that it's really who it is that's doing it. Now, this is the bog for. I was very upset when I got the bog. So I was like, oh my gosh, stagnation. They're not calling it really like stagnation as in uh like stagnation as in like a bad thing, like writer's block or something of that nature. All these blocks that we can't do anything. That's not the stagnation they're talking about. Very much talks about sort of like rest and how we sink into the land and rest. It's very reminiscent of being a seed and then growing out of it. Boglands are profoundly still and silent places. In them, time hardly seems to pass at all. Decay and decomposition are also suspended there, so our ancestors buried bodies deep in the moist peat to preserve them. If you reach your hands down into that rich black butter, who knows what buried mysteries you might find? To love a bog, then, is to love secrecy and subtlety, to forge what lies hidden beneath the surface. What better thing to talk about during the time right into Samhain? To love a bog, then, is to love secrecy and subtlety, to forge for what lies hidden beneath the surface. Superficially, a bog might seem like a dark and bleak place, and yet if you look closely, it will reveal abundance of subtle color, of texture, and of life. It won't shout at you like a flower garden or rainforest. A bug will creep up on you and offer up its gifts, one or two at a time. In this way, you come to see them more clearly and know them more deeply, because there's little else to crowd them out. A bog then teaches us to look for treasure in the most unlikely places, to focus on the close up, the quietly, the seemingly obscure. Be that detective. But above all, this card asks us to understand that sometimes what appears to be stagnation is actually preservation. Preservation. There are times when we need to hold still, reserve our energy and life force. There are times when we need to rest our assaulted senses, to cut back and pare down, to reduce our tendency for overwhelm, and drink in the beauty of the everyday. And that is my wish for you. I'm sure I'll come to you and see you again before sound, but like that is like my wish is that we take a moment and deeply look at something. It doesn't have to be whatever you want, just deeply look. That is the poet. We find beauty in small and what people would call insignificant things that we do not find as insignificant. So you're being called to be the archetype of the poet, and you can do this. Have a wonderful week. I am recording this October 19th, 2024. Take care, be well. Much love, peeps.